Hey friend, welcome to the One Income Family podcast. Are you sick of budgeting? Does it feel like you just finished the last budget only to have to do it again? Yet here we are. It's that time again, time to sit down and work your budget for yet another paycheck cycle. But you just don't want to do it. You sit down and you stare blankly at your budget and you just feel like you don't know what you should be doing. It feels foreign, it feels impossible, and like it's just going to take forever, right? Well, don't worry because you are not alone. I feel you, and that is why I'm going to share with you 3 things that help me keep going when all hope seems lost. So go cuddle up with a nice warm drink, get comfy with them babies, and open your heart to God as we head into today's episode. Do you find it hard to save or get out of debt? Are you constantly searching for ways to save money and live on a budget? Do you have big dreams only to be stopped by not sticking to your budget? Are you ready for financial freedom? Then you, mama, are in the right place. Welcome to the One Income Family podcast, where you will learn what it looks like to budget on one income, how to partner with God in your finances, how to budget in a way that's easy to stick to, and how to cut costs and save money, all so that you can start building wealth. It is my mission to equip you with these tools so that you can live in abundance regardless of the amount in your account. Hey, I'm Molly, a budget coach for stay-at-home moms, and I know what it's like to struggle on one income. I've lived paycheck to paycheck, relied on being frugal, and failed many budgets until I learned how to budget without tracking. This has allowed my family to pay off debt and build wealth all on one income. So, if you are ready for financial freedom, then go grab that stroller, plug in those headphones, and let's get to it. I see you, mama. You're out there, you're living on a set income with no wiggle room, and it's exhausting. I know that you're struggling to balance it all. I know that you want to stop living paycheck to paycheck so that you can save money, so that you can pay off debt, but most importantly, enjoy your life and have fun. I see you struggling to get ahead because budgeting, tracking, and managing it all just feels impossible. It's time to let that all go, to stop feeling exhausted and overwhelmed, and to lean into an easier way of budgeting. I am going to help you set up a budget that ends the paycheck to paycheck cycle, a budget that gives you wiggle room so that you can buy the extra thing, a budget that is set up on systems so that management is simple and tracking is easy. I want you to hit pause right now and send an email to mollybennell@gmail.com with the subject line budget audit so that you can get started with me and we can get this going for you. Again, that's mollybennell@gmail.com, MOLLY, B as in boy, ENELL @gmail.com. Are you in? Alrighty, so I'm going to be honest with you. I am currently, and I have been for a hot minute, struggling with the motivation to budget. Frankly, I just don't want to do it. Every time the pay cycle comes around, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's going to take forever. I'm going to have to go sit down and I'm going to have to do this budget and I just don't want to do it. And I sit down and I stare at it and I'm just like, I don't know what to do. But in all reality, I do know what to do. And that is why when you get low on motivation, it can be really hard to get out of it because you just kind of got to push through. And it can be such a difficult thing to push through when you just look at it and you stare at it and your mind is just blank. And I know you know the feeling. I know that you are right there with me. If you haven't been in the past, maybe you're finally in a stage where you are motivated to do the budget because, it's the beginning of the year and everyone's got all these goals and they're excited. But I'm excited for my goals. I just am struggling with actually doing the budget, right? So I know what it feels like to not want to do this. And that is why I knew that this was going to be such a good episode for you to listen to because it can be downright difficult and hard to budget when it comes to not having any motivation to do it. It makes it much more difficult than it actually is, because you're just like having to push through your own blocks, your own stops, and everything that's just like, oh, I don't want to do this, but I have to do it and I have no choice. So it's time to shift that mindset. And the Lord has brought me these 3 things. There was just one thing that I was like, oh yeah, this will be the one thing. It'll be great. They'll totally get awesome, stuff out of it. But as I sat down to write out the outline for this episode, I just felt the Lord continue to write these other 2 things down. And I knew that it was Him speaking to you instead of just me. So with that being said, I want you to know first and foremost that you are not alone when it comes to not wanting to budget. Not many people actually want to do it because it's really not fun. I love sitting down and creating the budget, like creating all the things that go together, especially in Excel. I could sit down and recreate a budget like 10,000 different times. I love doing that. But when it comes to actually implementing the budget, I am right there with you. I struggle. I don't want to do it. And so that is why it is so important to do these 3 things that I am going to share with you. And why don't we just jump into those? So the first thing, and the most important thing, which actually the first thing that I'm going to tell you is before the first actual tip, and that is always to pray, right? I want you to sit down and I want you to pray to God and just tell Him that you are struggling. Ask Him to be your mind, to be your tongue, to be your hands, to be your brain and your thinking and everything that you need to be, because you are struggling to do it yourself. He loves that, and He will definitely be there right with you through the struggle, because I know He does it for me all the time. So definitely make sure that is the very first thing you do. Now, the second thing that I want you to do is to learn your why, learn your purpose. And what I mean, there are so many people out there telling you to sit down and actually figure out who you're doing this for and why you're doing it and all this kind of stuff. But I want you first to look at the motivation of your heart. So not just like in your head, like, why am I doing this? What is the actual tangible thing that this budget is for? But rather, who are you doing it for? So I want you, if you have your Bible with you, if you're driving, don't stop and get your Bible out, but definitely go to this passage in the Bible when you get a chance. And that's Colossians 3:23. And it says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters. Now, in this passage, it's specifically talking about servants and how they're supposed to serve their masters, which in all regards, we are serving those with our budgets, right? So we should be working at this budget, at whatever it is that we are doing, with all of our heart for God. Not for that vehicle that maybe you want to get or the dream of going on vacation. Those are great things to dream for and to have goals to, put your money towards. But the very heart and soul and purpose of your budget should be to do God's will. It can be shown in so many ways. You can tithe it, which I suggest doing that. You can find ways to give. You can find ways to serve. I actually was just listening to podcasts the other day, and she found that or maybe it was a friend of her. Anyways, not the point. But this woman was talking about the fact that she wanted to serve other people, and she wanted to be able to give money, but she couldn't afford to give money in the sense that, she hands out money to those who are poor or tithes or does stuff like that. She found that her will that God had for her life during that season of time was to mentor other children, like her children's friends, and have them always come over to her house. I don't remember the way that she had it all set up, but her money then went into buying food for those friends to come over. So there are so many ways that you can find ways to give, and it can be for the will of God and for the heart of God. But it doesn't have to be in a set way. It doesn't have to be that you are giving money to a charity or that you are giving money to the church. They are all good and great things, but you need to sit down and you need to talk to God and figure out what is His will for you, for your life, for this season of life you are in, because it can change continuously, right? So when you sit down to do your budget, look at it through the eyes of God and what it is that He has planned for you, for your family, for this money, and let Him be the guide, be the motivator to why it is that you are budgeting and what it is you are budgeting for. That is going to make your motivation so much easier. When you are working with God, I know this firsthand. When you are working with God and you are planning things and you are implementing those said plans, it flies. It is easy to do. It is exciting. Oh my goodness, I can't talk right now. It is exciting to do, and it's not a struggle. And that's something, there are multiple verses out there in the Bible, but that is something that He talks about, is that when you do it in His strength, things are so much more simple. So figure that out. Why are you budgeting? Who are you doing it for? What is the motivation of your heart? What is your why? Then you can take it one step further and actually figure out what your budget is doing, what its purpose is, why you are doing the budgeting, because that right there is going to help you. Every time you sit down, you can look at your why, you can look at your motivation, you can look at why you are budgeting and making sure that you are sticking to it and implementing it in a way that seems fitting for that season because of whatever it is that is driving you to keep going. It's not all on you. It's not all on the things that only you can do. It's on God. It's on the belief that you are doing it for somebody else for a bigger and greater purpose. That could be just your family, but it could be something even bigger. Whatever it is, only you and God and your family are going to know, but you're not going to know what it is unless you sit down and really dive into what it is that your budget is supposed to be doing for you and for God. Okay, so that is the first thing, and that is like the biggest thing. If that's the only thing you get out of this episode, then please take it and run with it, because that is the very first thing that I want you to do before I even start mentioning the next two things, because those things you can do in your own strength. It's a lot easier with God, as I mentioned. But this is the one thing that is going to help you stay consistent, going to help you keep motivated, going to help you keep being joyful in the fact that you are doing it and not dread that you have to go and budget yet again, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, whatever your system is. It still can seem like a drag every time it comes around. You're like, I just finished that and now I have to go do it again? Yay me. Can't this just be on repeat? Which that is something that I do suggest doing. But there are still things that you have to go and check on and implement and make sure that things are, working the way they're supposed to be working, because there are always kinks in the things that we do. Okay, so I'll get off that tangent and move on to the next thing. So another thing that helps during times of low motivation is making sure that you have things that are automated. So automation is your best friend here. And I'm not just talking about like having things automatically transferred. That is a great tool to have. It's not something I suggest at the very beginning of your budgeting journey, because it can be overwhelming and exhausting, because you have to go in and continuously change things until you get your budget to the reoccurring amounts that you want them to be and that are actually working for your family. So I suggest instead figuring out things like systems and routines that are going to help you automate the tasks that you have to do. Implementing these systems and routines now while you are motivated, or even if you're not, maybe a little more of a kick in the butt that you might need to get going, right? But doing it while you are motivated will make the job simpler during times of low motivation because you are going to be able to easily do the tasks and do them quicker and more efficient and not sit there going, what am I supposed to do? When you don't have, to think about the hard task, even though it's really not hard, but when you have no motivation, things just feel extremely hard and exhausting. There's less resistance towards it. Let's be honest. Nobody wants to do the things that they're not motivated to do. So getting systems and routines set in place now so that when the time comes, because you know that it will, you will be able to push through it with not only your why, but with the systems and the routines that work for you. So do you have a bill system in place? Do you have a payday plan in place? Like, what tasks do you do on a regular basis to keep your finances in check, to keep it flowing the way it needs to be going? Write these down so that you don't have to think about it, right? Have a list so that you can say, okay, I did that. Okay, I did that. Okay, I did that. What's next? What's next? What's next? And just have it on repeat so that you aren't going, okay, what do I need to do? How do I do that? What do I need to do next? How do I do that? Do I really want to do this? No, I'd rather spend my time doing other things instead of having to think about what I have to do. The hardest part in staying motivated, especially when you have low motivation, is decision making. There is 100% something called decision fatigue. Look it up if you don't believe me. But you can get so exhausted trying to make these decisions, especially as a mom, especially during this time of year, because at the beginning of the year, you are constantly making decisions for new plans, for new things. You're not just implementing them and going along saying, okay, what's the next thing I have to do? You're going, okay, I got to plan my garden. So what do I want to do this year? How do I do that? You're answering those questions. You're setting goals for the year, going, what do we want to do? How do we want to make our family better? What do we want to work towards? Those are all questions that you have to continuously answer. And if you sit down then to do budgeting or something simple that you do all the time, you can be like, okay, I'm exhausted. I don't have the brain power for this anymore, and I don't want to do it. That is what usually kicks our motivation, and is when we don't have the energy to make decisions. Like, it can be really hard to make decisions during times of lots of decision making, especially when you have kids coming at you 100% of the time and you're trying to make new plans and you're just like, okay, I can't do this. Somebody else take these kids. I'm about to lose my brain. You know where I'm coming from, because I'm 100% positive you've been there. You just didn't know that that's what was going on. The irritability comes on because you're just exhausted, mentally, physically overwhelmed, and all of it comes down to sometimes just simply decision fatigue. And so if you have systems and routines in place around the things that you know that you have to do on a regular basis for these budgets that you are doing, for your payday routine, for your bills, for your meal planning even, it can make it so much more simpler and less exhausting on you, because you just look at the list, you say, okay, I'm doing this next, go do it. You look at the list, you look at the next thing, and you just keep going down the list till you're done, and there's no decisions being made. The decision has already been made for you. That is the great thing about these systems and routines that you can do. The system is the paper, it's the tasks in a list. The routine is when you get used to doing it all the time, that it's just on autopilot and you don't have to look at the system anymore. You don't have to look at the list, but it takes time for that to happen, for it to become second nature. And by having that list, it takes away the stress, it takes away the low motivation, because it's just something that you're like, okay, I sit down, I do this list, I complete it, I'm done, I move on. There's not decisions being made. There's not, okay, what do I do next? There's not questions that you have to answer. And that right there is going to just release so much pressure off of you by putting that on a piece of paper so that in time it can be automated and it's systemized and it's simple and easy and quick to do. Okay, the next thing that I want you to do is to look over your budget. You may have the systems in place, you may have your why, but you may not be aligned with your why with your budget. And what I mean here is that your budget is no longer serving you and it's time to change it up. You look at your goals that you've made for the year because it's a new year, right? But we have to actually put that into our budget to be able for that budget to serve us in this new manner. We have new things that are coming and we need to make sure that our goals are actually aligned with our why. They're aligned with God's will. They're aligned with our dreams and desires and goals that we have for our family. And if they are not, especially during the season with these new goals in place, we have to change up our budget to achieve those new goals. Then you're not going to want to sit down and do it because you're going to look at it and you're going to say, I don't like this. I don't want to do it, but I also don't have the brain power to figure out a new system to put in place or to actually figure out what goals I need to change or all that kind of stuff. And so you just move on to the next thing. So I want you in this time period, if it's your budget that isn't aligning with everything else that I've talked about, then I want you to separate some time out so that you can sit down and you can look at your goals and you can look at your budget and you can make them come together into one cohesive budget that will achieve your financial goals, be it the small ones, be it the big, large, gigantic ones that could be like paying off debt or saving up money for a new vehicle or going on that vacation. But it could also just be simply putting enough money into your family spending account so that you can go on a monthly on a monthly date with your husband, with your kids. Putting those things in place are also going to motivate you, going to get you excited, going to be like, yes, I get to do this. I'm excited to sit down and budget because I get to see how much money I can put towards those things. And then I can maybe go start planning them, which in my brain, I am struggling with decision fatigue. I'm going, no, I don't want to go plan anything else. My brain's tired. I just want to go to sleep. I just want to go rest. But the whole point that I'm trying to get here is, yes, we need to rest. Like that is 100% going to help you with being able to have motivation. And maybe that's something I should add to this, is that rest is also required for a higher level of motivation. If you don't have the energy to do something, then you're not going to have the motivation to do it. So rest, whether that is sleeping, whether that is just, doing something physically instead of mentally for a hot minute, whether that is making sure you're getting the food that you need so that you can be energized to do the things that you need to do. There can be so many factors that are at play here. But you need to make sure that you are resting. You need to make sure that you're letting the Lord restore your soul. That is like the thing that God is really laying on my heart right now is to restore my soul, which is from Psalms 23. I don't remember the exact verse that it is, but I love that right there. He's just been talking to me about restoring my soul and settling down and slowing down. And it has made a huge difference in my energy and my motivation to do anything, in my ability to be a good mom because I'm not angry or irritable. And so if that's something that you're struggling with, maybe you need to start looking at that right there. But going back to changing up your budget, it is so important that your budget is actually aligned with what it is that you have planned for your family and what God has planned for your life, because it's going to actually be exciting to sit down and budget when you can see how much money you can put towards something else, instead of the opposite when you're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have a lot of money and I got to see how this is going to work. This is just a Debbie Downer. It's not exciting. I don't want to do this because I just know that I don't have a lot of money. And you can just spiral. It can just keep going on and on like that. But it's time to stop that spiral. It's time to say, okay, I know what I need to do. I know the steps that I need to do. I know that maybe first I need to focus on my energy, get my energy up, separate some time to look at my budget, to talk to God, to figure out what my why is, and to figure out what steps I need to take so that I can have systems and routines in place and they can actually achieve the goals and the dreams and the desires that we are actually going towards for as a family, for God's will, for the things that we are doing in this season of our life. And that is going to make a huge difference in your motivation. Okay, so I'm going to go over those again, which I kind of just did sum it up for you a little bit, but I'm going to shorten it up to sum it up. And that is the first thing I want you to do to regain your motivation is to pray to God. Then I want you to, maybe I should add right there is where I want you to go and get your energy up, get yourself rested so that you can go into what it is that you need to do in the next steps with the energy and the desire to do it. Number 3, then, now we get into our actual steps, is to learn your why, your purpose, your motivation, your heart's motivation behind what it is that you are doing. Why do you want to budget? Who do you want to budget for? Who are you doing it for? Is it for you? Is it for the world? Is it for God? What is actually driving your budget? Then I want you to sit down and I want you to write out your list of what it is that you do when you budget. It can be your bills, it can be your whole thing, it can be separate little systems, but write them down so that you don't have to continuously think about what it is that you need to do. And then the third thing is to look at your budget and look at your goals and see if they align. See if they actually are going to serve you. See if your budget is actually going to achieve those goals, or if your budget's just simply what somebody else told you to set up, right? Is it just numbers that you're like, oh, I think this is good, but it doesn't actually serve you. It doesn't actually achieve the things that you want to do in life, whether it's a big financial goal or a little financial goal. And so those are the things that I want you to do, and probably in those order, so that you can do it in a way that is life-giving, that is going to be partnering it with God and is going to actually get you through the hard instead of keeping you stuck where you're at. Now, if you struggle with this and you are in a time of low motivation, please reach out to me. Please let me help you. Let me help you figure out what your motivation is and help you figure out what it is that you want to do, what your true goals are. Maybe I can help you figure out or brainstorm some of the things that you can do to bring back some energy, because maybe that's something you're struggling with. But specifically, what I'm really good at is helping you figure out your systems and routines that you would like to be doing. Help you write them down, help you get them on a list so that you aren't having to think about what it is, and we can get rid of that decision fatigue. So, with that being said, you can get yourself a budget audit. That's where you can learn more about what it is that I do, but more specifically, figure out what's going on in your budget and get it in a way that's aligned with you and what it is that you want to do. We can fix your finances in a way that is honoring to you and your family and to God, and you can really just gain clarity around what's going on so that you can figure out the steps that you need to take to fix your finances. So shoot me an email at mollybennell@gmail.com with the subject line budget audit so that we can get started and we can get you aligned with your budget, aligned with your why, and get these systems in place so that you no longer have to stress over what it is that you have to do. You can just sit down, do it easily, and move on. Okay, so with that being said, I will see you right back here next week on another episode of the One Income Family Podcast. Before you go, I hope this episode has ignited a fire inside of you, and I pray that it creates long-lasting impact. Did you know that you too can impact other one-income families? All you have to do is leave a written review and you help get the podcast in the hands of other mamas in need. You can also text this episode to that friend who is also knee-deep in the same kind of chaos as you and inspire them to make a change. Also, your review lets me know that you're enjoying the show, and that lights me up. I get so excited to hear from you. Another great way that we can connect, though, is through the One Income Family community over on Facebook. So after you're done leaving that 5-star review, head on over to the community where you will find other mamas working their way out of the chaos. You can ask your questions and connect with others who truly understand what you are going through. I cannot wait to connect with you in the community. Until then, I will see you right here next week on another episode of the One Income Family podcast.